welcome to the call today. Today, my guest is Jared Kligerman. Jared is the president at the think tank, TTT, right, Jared?
That is correct.
Welcome to the call, Jared. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
So, walk us through, Jared. What is this think tank, and what's involved, and what do you guys do at think tank?
Absolutely. So the Think Tank is a full-service communications agency based here in Toronto, working with brands across North America to drive trial, lift sales, and grow basket size. So if you wanted to classify this, if you're a marketer, we're shopper marketers or trade marketers are kind of our two focuses. For the layperson, we do all the fun contests and promotions and coupons and social media, all those things that make you want to go buy a product. We do a lot of that work.
I see. So walk us through a little bit of your journey. How do you get to this? You were doing something else before you started the think tank, I take it, right? So yeah, if you can just give us a little bit of overview of how you got to this point.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really interesting story of how I ended up here. So the agency itself, and just to kind of start there for a second, has been around for over 30 years. So I'm not the founder. I've been very fortunate to come into the team and have taken over the lead charge, as it were, but it's certainly not a solo effort. I rely heavily on my VPs who have been with the agency for longer than I have and are the true experts when it comes to marketing. As you might guess from all of that, I don't come from the agency life. I spent over 7 years as a management consultant working with companies globally and government organizations, more in the US, really to develop their culture, develop leadership skills, develop service and sales skills as they pertain to things like communication, emotional intelligence, talked a lot about generations, personality, all of that type of stuff. And I got into the agency through my network. Most of my career is attributed to my network, and I talk about this a lot. And it really goes back to where I did my MBA at Schulich, which is at York University. On my very first day of orientation of the MBA, hadn't even taken a class yet. I happened to catch eyes with this guy across the back of the auditorium. You can't tell because I'm sitting, but I'm 6'8", so I'm a giant. This other guy, his name is Mike. He's no shrimp himself at 6'6", I think, something like that. So had the tall guy eyes over everyone's heads connection. And we become very, very good friends. And about 4 years ago, he called me up and said, "Hey, man, I think I got the opportunity for us to finally get into business together." Third attempt at this. And so he bought the agency as an investment play. He's in finance. He's in one of the big 5 banks. He's like, "I don't want to learn about marketing in the way that's required to run this thing. And I don't want to leave what I'm doing, but you like this stuff, right?" Yeah, I really do. And that's literally how I got into marketing. So I came from a world of working in digital, social, CRM marketing to a degree for the consultancy. But moving over to this agency, my first year was just trying to inhale as much as I could from the fire hose of information that was coming at me in terms of understanding what shopper and trade marketing was, where we fit within the world of marketing, what our clients look like, how could we adjust what we were doing to grow more successfully. And it was not an easy task, for sure. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I rely very heavily on my VPs, Sherry Ann and Justin. I cannot give them enough credit for everything they do. They literally are the agency, and they were phenomenal. So the way we're structured very much allows everyone to play to their strengths and their expertise. So when it comes to our day-to-day, I'm not hands-on with our clients directly, because why would I be? I don't have that skill set. I got very talented people who do that for me. That's how I got involved, and that's kind of what we do and how we operate too.
So how did you make that transition, Jared? When you were in the managing consulting, is that a different problem you were solving in a business, and now you're solving a different problem, or is it almost the same? How did you make a transition from managing consulting to a marketing?
Different problems that we're solving, although we fall into a lot of the same strategy. In terms of my role, it's very similar between the two. The management consultant, we were called in when we were seeing high employee churn, or we were seeing sales constantly miss targets, or the culture just was one where the leaders recognized it wasn't going to be successful long term, so we'd come in. On the agency side, we're really being brought in when a brand is going to market, when they need to lift sales, or they want to capitalize on an upcoming occasion, whether that's Valentine's Day, it's coming up, or just passed rather. So we're definitely called in for different things, but from the business side of it, of how we operate, we're still a business-to-business service. So a lot of the challenges that come along with that are constant between the two. So we're in the tail end of the pandemic right now as we're recording this for future listeners. So, this past year, lots of brands and companies at large have been really watching their budgets. And the first two things to get cut without fail are training and marketing. I think very wrongly, but this is the way people work. So in that regard, it's been very similar. Budgets get tight, training gets cut. That was my old job. Now it's marketing. Do we want to spend money, especially for the niche of marketing we operate in? Do you want to be discounting your products at a time when they're being bought off the shelf so quickly you can barely keep them in stock? Are you going to risk putting something in store when consumers aren't stopping in store anymore? They're trying to get in and out as fast as they can. And so, budgets have shifted quite a lot that way. So we're solving different problems. The approach for me has been very similar. I mean, I haven't changed my approach to what I do very much between the two. My approach has always been understanding my clients, my prospects. So for me, it's understanding that brand, where they're positioned in the market, who their target audience is, but they're not serving everyone. Take a stab at what their market budget might be in advance of me calling. So that's why I have an idea of what I'm talking about. Because I'd say about 80% of my calls, I know there's no opportunity going into it. Mostly because they're too small. Or they're too big. Once in a blue moon, they're too big, and I know they have agency of records already established, and I'm not going to be able to break that down quickly. So that's all really stayed the same. I mean, I spent a lot of time researching the trends, seeing what's happening. And so my sales approach is very much, let me share what I've been able to learn and research, because the reality is even the best brand managers I know just don't have the bandwidth to stay on top of these trends. So if I can be that voice of info, of knowledge, of expertise, although I hate that word, when there is that need, they'll call me. It's what I did back in my management consulting days too, just more focused around culture development, leadership development, generational insights, so on and so forth.
So what has changed with the COVID, Jerry? Both on the consumer side and your client side, what impacted COVID? There's so much messages out there, so much information around COVID, and you trying to communicate with either consumers or you trying to communicate with the client. So what has changed from your thoughts?
So the pandemic for us has kind of accelerated a lot of what we already had in the works, and the same holds true for consumer trends, and to a certain extent, brand trends as well. So for us, we had already been looking to expand our client base, looking to go more digital, both within our marketing strategy, but also within our own operations to go completely cloud oriented. We were already looking at getting into the office. A lot of our clients were also kind of in that same position. So first half of pandemic was a lot of upheaval for all of us, right? It was a scramble of how do we keep doors open? How do we get products to shelf? We, like many other agencies, took a massive hit. I cannot say thank you enough to my existing clients who have been amazing. We've landed a few more in the last few months, which has been incredible. And the government, for the many mistakes that they've made, subsidies are fantastic. It's just, really helped us manage to get through. And for my clients as well. Right, lots of them in the CPG space had to let some people go, and then have rehired them. It's been a real mess for everyone in that space. And then the other side of it as well, as I was kind of saying before, the uncertainty around lockdowns, on when things will return to normal, what's happening in the retail space. All of those things have really caused hesitation and caused a lot of pause from both the retailer and the brands on whether or not they want to invest into their marketing. Kind of what I was saying before as well, consumers, more so in the US than here, but certainly up here as well, lots of people have lost jobs or have taken a reduction in salary. And so your disposable income's gone down. And so, and even not just your disposable income, but the small premiums that you may have been paying to get a specific food type due to your interest in wanting to be keto, or whether you wanted to be plant-based, whatever it happened to be, lots of consumers just don't have that premium anymore. So it's also come into that position now, and what's happening to a lot of the emerging brands is that they relied on those extra dollars consumers had. Right now, not everyone has those extra dollars. So things are getting better. We're swinging back out, talking to those in the space from the brand side. Lots of them relied on food service. People don't always think about how much food service applies to these emerging brands, because it's not just restaurants. You just have all the office buildings. I know lots of snack brands who had 50 to 80% plus of their revenue coming from places like Google. Well, Google's not to have their office open right now, so they're struggling. So it's been really interesting to see how brands have adjusted and have managed to get through so far. They're not out of the woods yet. So I think the next 6 months are going to be very telling about how brands are going to react, and then also how consumers are going to react. My personal feeling is everyone's itching to get back to normal. The second restrictions start to lift and people start getting the vaccines in, people are going to want to get back out there, get back to normal life as quickly as possible. But we just don't know when that's going to be. So there's hesitation. There's lots of hesitation, lots of uncertainty, lots of hedging bets still. Not as bad as last year, but still happening. So we've accelerated a lot of what we've done. So we started we really focus on consumer packaged goods. It's our forte, food, cleaning products, personal care, whatever it happens to be. We do all of it. I have a personal interest in food and beverage, my own personal interest. As an agency, we do it all. But we've also broadened it out now to go after consumer services. So we're now working with a financial tech company in that space, working with a couple of first aid or wellness companies, I should say, a couple of government contracts as part of that as well. So we've broadened out, we've expanded what we're able to offer in-house to include your video, your animation, AR, VR, all sorts of other stuff. We've really just expanded out every way we could. Some of that was going on before the pandemic. Lots of it's been done in the last year because we've had a little bit of extra bandwidth. So we've been able to meet the right partners, put the right partnerships in place. So if you're going into retail now and you really want to have your presence felt and you have a little bit of extra cash on you, we can talk about things like putting in directional audio so that person literally stops dead in their track because a voice comes out of nowhere to say, "Hey, were you looking for bananas today?"
Yeah.
And that reaction is so impressive. It's amazing. And it's not that expensive, but you do need to have enough budget to pay for that one piece, plus the exit in store, plus all the other pieces to that campaign, because I am not one ever to say you should do any type of tactic in isolation, because marketing doesn't work that way. So if you can only afford, my favorite go-to example, if you can only afford the $11,000 to $15,000 for a coupon pad at shelf, because that's how much it costs, don't spend your money there. If you only got 20 grand, don't spend 2/3 of it on a coupon pad and for coupon pads when they're not supported with extra stuff. You're just rewarding your existing loyal buyers for buying, which is not the goal usually. So it's thinking about all those things.
So Toronto being a tech hub, and there's so many new tech companies coming out, you working within the space, beside this, voice technology, we talk about AI, we talk about what has changed in the marketing. Do you see new changes coming in a marketing field, new ways of communicating with the people, new ways of, either texting, I see a lot of car dealerships use that, texting capability, that if you drive in by the car dealership, the message will pop up in your cell phone, "Hey, check out this car, we have a deal on this." I thought that was very interesting because now you are tracking location and you texting the same time when somebody's passing by. So do you see more technology advancements coming in your space, or what have you seen during the COVID has changed with all that technology?
Yeah, a big push for more technology and marketing at large. A big thing that's kind of swinging back and forth right now, might not be top of mind for a lot of people, but flyers are a big deal. For what I do, it's a big part of what we do, particularly in the US. And through COVID, it's been a real swing back and forth on whether or not we keep print or we go exclusively digital. Not when I say we, not me personally, the retailers, right? Early in the pandemic, every single retailer stopped carrying paper. They all went exclusively digital because it's touching stuff, right? We didn't want to do that. Most have brought back a paper version now. So there's definitely more technology coming in. What you were talking about, having having those gated areas, so when someone goes close, you have the proximity, so when someone goes close, you get the text. Certainly starting to pick up. SMS is really picking up now. It's not super expensive. We don't do a ton of it. This falls into a type of marketing we don't do a lot of. We'll piggyback it if someone already has that in place, though. It's part of our advantage is we look at everything you're doing and we want to leverage what you're doing. Some stuff that I think has kind of been hovering on the edge and hasn't quite broken in, things like AR, which technically includes things like your Instagram filters. It's technically AR, but I'm talking more about the more engaging AR that goes beyond just putting a filter over top of your face. And VR as an extension. There's been a lot of talk about it. VR still has some cost barriers that are preventing it from becoming mainstream, but AR is starting to pick up more and more, and I think we're going to see more of that coming into play as a way to provide the consumer with more information about the product they're picking up. We're really, as a society in North America, really like the clean label look. The problem is you can't put that much information on a clean label because it's clean. So using something like a QR code or turning your logo into a scannable element that will then take you over to a website or open up an AR experience right now. You can interact with it to get the full ingredient list, or the full ingredient list should be there, but the full nutrition facts in whatever size you want. Or you want to be able to trace this ingredient back if you're offering traceability. You can scan it, you can see the whole thing pop up and go live. So I think there's a lot of space there. There's a lot also coming through in on the OTT.
Okay, what is that?
OTT, so it's outside television. So it's all your third-party TV things, like your Hulus. So how do you now leverage Netflix, all those things that aren't tied to a TV box? So how do you now start to capitalize on all those people who are watching things on Netflix, right? That's your TV consumer who now you can't get on your normal broadcast. So how do you get them? Podcasts are now in this space as well in terms of an emerging media platform, right? You still have your radio. People still listen to radio a lot. It's actually more successful than people think it is. Same as direct mail, but podcasts are where everyone's heading. So same type of thing. So how do you do that on the video side? Again, we do this a little bit, but if you start to talk to what I call the above line marketers, the advertisers, they're really focused on that right now because those traditional advertising channels are getting diluted by these newer options coming through. So that's definitely coming, and COVID's been a great experiment for a lot of brands to play with some of these new technologies and see what the uptake is, because you have a very active audience who's stuck in their houses, or have been mostly stuck in their houses. So they've tried a lot. Some has worked, and for the brands it's working for, you see them doubling down on it, and those who it hasn't, you see them veering away. So it's a lot of this is still so emerging. It's really exciting stuff. There's still a lot of concern around privacy, particularly data. Some really neat tech coming out of Asia, and by extension as well, some of Europe, around things like using cameras at shelf to deliver semi-personalized content based on your gender, which is a tough one to do. We've never passed laws here, but being done over there. And so there's things you can start to play off of. And that's technology that exists. It's viable, it's there, but we aren't ready for it yet. And I don't know if we will be in North America for a while.
I see. So there's a cameras set up in a stores that they identify, and based on the gender, they send you a customized content for marketing. Is that what it is?
So I've only seen it demoed. I haven't tried it myself because it's not here. Basically, so you have a little digital screen at shelf with a camera, and so based on things like your gender, your height, they'll try and guess your age bracket. All those types of things, they'll tailor what it is. So it could be you're wearing a red coat and they'll use the color red, and so it'll shift the color of the ad to match what you're wearing. If you're trying to sell a makeup or a facial product. If you're a certain height, they might try and shift the message to something about having your head in the clouds, right? So you can start to have fun with it. That's kind of in a more creepy way. In a less creepy way, the things that are much more viable and are kind of here playing around with cameras, you can look at billboards, your out-of-home displays that will shift the content based on weather. I haven't seen this go live yet because it's been more in theoretical conversations, but we're getting close to a point with our smart cars now. You can have a receiver on that billboard that when a certain car goes by, say it's a certain Ford model, you already have that smart car, it's already transmitting a signal, it'll pick up and it'll shift the message to respond to your model Ford, right? We're not so far away, maybe a decade is getting a little futurist, but 10 years out, it won't be a big billboard. It'll just be something projected on your dashboard because you won't be driving your car anymore because it'll be autonomous, right? And I'm only jumping down the wave of where we're going, but this is what's happening to marketers now, is how do we deliver that really personalized message to you, no matter where you are, while not stepping on your privacy laws or not trampling all over your data. It's really fascinating. And for us in Shopper, we're on the fringe of a lot of it. So we get to play as an extension. It's not really a primary for us yet.
So leaving the privacy on a side, let the expert deal with that. But as a marketer, how much it looks like it opens up a lot of opportunities for you guys how to communicate with the people.
It does. Marketers on the brand side of things have never had more options available to them, which in some ways is actually a problem. Too much choice is as big a problem as not enough choice. And it's getting really tricky. So, I kind of said at the beginning, one of the big things I do in my sales, I don't sell. One of my biggest faults and one of my biggest perks is that I'm a great salesperson, but I don't sell. It's weird, but it works. But for all these brand managers, a lot of the time they're looking at, I've got 20 different options available to me about where I want my message to show up. I've got all this data about my target audience. What do I do with it? And most of their time is fixated on that, building out the best campaign, measuring the results, and going back to tweak. but it means they don't have time to look at this. They don't have the time to look at, here's what all these other brands are doing. Here's what's happening in this other category that you don't even follow because it's not even a food product anymore, and you happen to be working for Hershey's. Well, this is from Nivea, but look how cool that campaign was, and we can actually leverage that idea and bring it over here.
Yeah.
And so that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, because the brand side just doesn't have time for the most part, unless they're a huge one who have a huge research department. Different story. So from the brand side, there's a lot of excitement. For marketers, it very much depends on your focus of marketing, about how much new and novel is coming. I mean, you can be a marketer in AR. I know a few who are AR, VR marketers. It's all they do is build out AR, VR. It's a brand new emerging field for them. And it's wickedly excited. Very tough sell right now, because small brands just don't have the cash. And big ones, you need to explain the value. And we're getting better and better at being able to do that.
So how do they build a focus, Jared? There's so many choices available for strategy standpoint. How do you cannot evaluate every single platform out there, so they need to gain focus. So talk about the process. How do they gain focus and say, listen, this is what I'm going after, and this is the only thing I'm going to invest a lot of time and energy on. But there's so many choices available. But there's also risk of picking up the wrong item to focus on as well, right? So talk about what's the process that goes behind the whole work to only target one or two platforms.
Sure. So I would rarely say focus on one or two. If you're coming to me, if you're coming to my agency, our best value is helping you do exactly what you're asking. How do you pick the best options, and how do you distribute your budget in the most optimal way to generate the highest potential of the best return? Because there's a lot we can't control, right? It's lots of people come and say, hey, I want to get this type of sales up. How much do I need to spend? Off the top of my head, I don't know. And more importantly, I'm not going to be held to it, because I'm not in control of your sales, your distribution. Like, there's so many factors I don't control, but I can help you, give you an idea of where it's going to head. So for us, I can talk broad strategy. When you get into the nuts and bolts, as I said before, I rely very heavily on my VPs. One of them handles the creative development side, the other one's the strategy side. So when it gets into the nickels and dimes, she gets called in for this stuff. But in general, first and foremost is, who are you trying to target? Who's your audience, right? Not you use me as your target audience. I'm not on every platform. So where am I spending most of my time? Because that's where you want to connect with me. That's where you're going to want to spend your dollars. What are the points where I'm getting the key information that's influencing my buying decision? So I might be on every single social media platform, but how many am I actually engaging with in a meaningful way? Am I buying your product online, or am I buying it in store? Where are you trying to drive that sale to is a huge question for us. Are you trying to drive to e-com? You're trying to drive to Amazon? You're trying to drive to well.ca? You want to go to No Frills? Based on that, we'll also dictate what platforms you need to put more dollars in to drive that traffic to that location. It doesn't mean, I think one of the most brilliant things for me personally that's come out of the pandemic in terms of prospects and brands is that so many brands have gone and tried doing things on their own. And I'm so happy they did, because it shifted the conversations I have now. Because one of the challenges a lot of founders, so I'm talking really emerging brands, not the big guys. A lot of emerging brands don't come from deep marketing backgrounds, or don't even come from food. Right? Lots of people get into the food business with no background in food whatsoever, and they learn as they go. So I would often, pre-pandemic, get calls like, hey, I just got into all the Sobeys in Ontario. I need to do something in store. How can I do that for 20 grand? The quick answer is you can't. Like I used my example before, that number was accurate. If you want to have a coupon in all the pick a chain, all the stores in Canada, you're looking 11, 15 grand, right? That's for a coupon pad. So you got 20 grand? No, don't spend your money there. But that's a conversation. So it's a shoot down, then an explanation. It's just never a fun call. Now I get a call saying, hey, I just got into Sobeys. I've got $20,000. How can I spend that to drive traffic there? It's a completely different conversation. Now, you already know we're not going to do something directly in store. So let's go and talk about your trade dollars and talk to your broker to see what we can do to leverage whatever we're doing. Can we talk about, maybe we can reduce the pallet cost, and so you can get a second facing somewhere. Maybe we can get an end display. And while you're doing all that to help your visibility in store, not through us necessarily, we'll just give you pointers and advice. We'll develop a social and digital campaign that's going to help push all that traffic to the store and their e-commerce, because nothing's in isolation anymore. But then when you finally get that consumer there, now they've seen a couple posts, they've seen something pop up when they're looking at the weather, and now they're in store, and now you have an end cap display. You're like, oh yeah, I meant to buy that. That whole campaign you can do for 20 grand very easily, very easily. but it's a difference of understanding your expectation for your dollar. And that's a big piece of it too. You know, when you're picking your channels, where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? You know, if you're going to go on LinkedIn, which is a pretty expensive platform, all things considered, but that's where your target audience is. It makes more sense to spend $100 on LinkedIn to get 10 really qualified leads than to do the same on something like Facebook. We'll get 250 leads, but only 3 of them are legit and actually have real business for you, right? So we spend a lot of time. So the brand side spend a lot of time mining their own data to try and refine it, and then they come to us with a brief. Is the way we typically work. And on the brief, they say, here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's our target audience. Here's the timelines. Here's the retailers involved. Here's our messaging. Here's our budgets. Here's all the research we have. Come back to us in usually 2 weeks with a proposal. If you can get to 3 weeks, one of the big things we've built in now is if we can get 2.5, 3 weeks in, we'll actually pre-test some of our concepts in creative. So that when we go in, we can say, hey, you know, all these tactics available to you, we tested this one and we actually found that this one would be best. Or you want to do a gift card? Awesome. We actually tested it. And we found that grocery gift cards are the highest influencer for your target audience out of any other type of gift cards, which is why we're only offering gift cards in all of our suggestions, in all of our, usually come up with 3 big ideas per pitch. But normally we only have 2 weeks, so we don't have time to go and test and come back just because it takes time. And then we come back, and so we'll say, hey, you know, given your budgets and the channels you want to leverage, we suggest you going with this breakdown. And here's the 3 different ways, the creative that's going to bring it to life. And then you let us know how that looks. And then you say, yes, that's great. No, we want to tweak these things. Can we blend the big, you know, that idea and take these things, which happens all the time. Or, you know what, we're not going to work with you on this one, but thanks for the time. And, you know, for us, the outcome is awesome. Keep us in mind for the next time. We'd love to work with you. And if we get it, awesome. Let's get this thing rolling right away. But it's a big decision, and it's getting really complicated for small brands. And a lot of the smaller brands who call me, it's really more, hey, just to confirm, I should just be spending my time on social and digital right now. And and you can do most of it yourself. Like, honestly, I run an agency, so I'm shooting myself in the foot as I say this. But really, the biggest value an agency can bring you is strategy. Especially for a small brand. Right? For most small brands, you already have most of the assets at this point. So now you just need the direction. Build out your social media calendar, build out your promotions, know what each post should look like, and have it templated so it's easy for you to execute. Get an agency to build that out, because that's the heavy lifting. That's the really hard part, is building all that out. Once you've got all the bits and pieces together, now, I mean, if you use a platform like Canva, or there's a few other free ones out there, as long as you have it all set up, you can plug and play it. And, you know, I've seen, you know, kids put together ads that, quite honestly, 90% of the public would never know were put together by a 10-year-old, because it's drag and drop. It's so easy to do now, but it's all based on an overarching strategy that drives everything. And if you don't have that expertise, you know, it's really daunting. It's a huge amount of work to do. So pay for that. That's worth paying for. It's a lot of time. Pay for what you can't execute on. Then what you can execute on, either do it yourself, or that way you can outsource it to a freelancer who's going to cost you a lot less than a full-out agency.
Yeah, one is building a strategy, as you mentioned. There's a lot of hard work, heavy lifting. You know, building the platform, building the strategy, and messaging what needs to be done. And the second is a process over the time. You know, you can expect a short-term, a process and the result on a longer run, right? So talk about building strategy is one piece, and process in terms of getting consistent message out over the time. You know, that's a second piece. How much hard work is put into the process over the time? Because anything you do in a market, you can't be doing in a few months. You got to look at longer run, right? So to get that result. So how much hard work is put into that ongoing process?
Oh, a lot. Oh, yeah. So people underestimate how much time is required to get into marketing, and even to do. This is a personal example, because it's the easiest way for me to do this. So I'm working on a product on the side. My wife's involved. So she has zero marketing experience. She's not a marketer, but she's taking on our marketing, because I'm taking on everything else, because that's my background. And so she started to build out a social media calendar for the next 6 months, or for our first 6 months, because we haven't launched yet. And she came back to me and showed it to me. I said, this is great. So we also need to add in all of these themed days. And then for each one of those, you have to break out the content creation, like the production calendar. Because for each one, it's a food product. So for each one of these, we need to have the video, and we need to have the shots, and we need to have it framed. And then we also have all these other, she's like, oh my God, this is so much. I'm like, you basically, to create your social media calendar, you've got your calendar. you have your rough calendar, then you have your detailed calendar, and then you have your content creation calendar, and then you got to put it all together. So it's a ton, and it can. I gotta say, thanks to platforms like Canva, just because it's one that keeps coming up in my conversations with other people. I don't use it. I'm not affiliated with them any way. But I know lots of agencies who build out all the templates and say, "Hey, brand, it's all set up for you. You pay, several $1,000s to get it all set up. But once it's done, you just go in, and so you'll spend a few hours and you'll bang out all the content you need for a month, just because it's all there." If you're doing it completely on your own, so I'm fortunate. I'm a bit of a photographer, so right now I'm sitting underneath 2 floodlights. I have my camera, my light box, so I can shoot all these things myself. But I'm still giving myself, because it's a side hustle for me, 2-3 months just to shoot everything. And these are just the core assets. These aren't specific to specific recipes, but I have to shoot the whole video on how to make that. That's a whole epic collection of stuff I got to do. And so I've got the experience. It's going to take me 2-3 months on the side to get all my shots done for the first 6 months. Right? So if you're a sole entrepreneur with no experience, you're going to have to pay. And the other thing to think about if you're a new brand is the cost. People don't understand how much things cost to create, or the markups involved from your another big shocker for my wife who's going through all this for the first time and building out a product. It costs us whatever it costs to make. So run it backwards. If you're selling something at shelf for $10, your cost of goods all the way back down has to be under $4. The rest is markup cost and a bit of profit for yourself, obviously, but like the rest is markup costs along the way. And so you talk to lots of founders who are like, I didn't realize that the retailers take 20-40 points, the distributor takes 10 to 30 points, and then you got your own profit margin built in there, plus your marketing dollars on top of that. You don't think about all these costs, and all of a sudden you're trying to get into retail, and you went from making $3 direct to consumer to 10 cents per unit. And now you've got to sell thousands to make bank, and people just don't realize what those costs are.
Well, it's everybody's time put into, right? Everybody puts time into it, time and energy put into it. By the time, it's not a one person, it's the whole teams, and
it's
a lot of efforts put into it.
So much. And it's a combination. I think that's a really good point. It's that time involved that it takes to get things going. I was talking to my brother-in-law yesterday. He's like, "So you guys ready to go? Can you launch today?" I'm like, technically we could, but we don't have labels done, we don't have packaging done, we don't have the marketing done, we don't have I'm just putting the banking put in play. Like there's so many steps you got to do, and you're one person. The amount of time I've spent already, it's a part-time job easily. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of time.
So talk about a little bit on a communication standpoint, Jared. What has changed before COVID and after this? During the COVID, there's so much government messages coming out. There's so much message, information around health and safety. Of course, that's a necessary. Just make sure people are safe, they're getting what they need. On the same time, for marketers to get their messages out, does that create a challenge for you, or how big or is it an opportunity for you? How do you see that that you're trying to market at the same time there's this pandemic going on?
It's both. It's harder and easier, more exciting, more depressing. It's kind of a mix of everything, right? You've got this really fine line of what you want to communicate and how you communicate it while still being sensitive and aware of what's going on in the world around you. So, early days pandemic, you saw what happened. A brand would try to do something and there'd be backlash, right? Because they didn't align it quite right. So the big trend and what we try to do, and what I think every marketer is really trying to do now, and every brand's trying to do, is that the brand has circled back to becoming the problem solver for consumers. So we really see this over any big holidays, but in general, through the pandemic, because we're all stuck at home, we can't solve a lot of things. Like, what do? We are so bored. What can we do with ourselves? We've gone through everything on Netflix. We have not, but we all think we have. So that people go to brands and say, what can we do now? And so when you look at the top, in my opinion, the top campaigns coming out, they're campaigns that help consumers solve problems. And we're seeing a shift in that communication away from solely buy my coffee because it tastes delicious to here's how you create the cafe experience at home. Right? Coming up to a lot more of this, I hate the word integrated, but this integrated message of we're not just a product, we're part of your lifestyle. We're helping you create something. And it's caused a big shift. We've seen a really big shift starting to occur from marketing just being here's a discount because it's a discount to we actually have to have real purpose and reason and value behind what we're doing. And so I will say that the think tank as a whole, through our entire history, when we do prizing, we don't just want to give you a prize or a prize that softly affiliates with your thing. So if you're doing a summer campaign, we're not going to do a barbecue just for the sake of doing a barbecue because it's summer. It's really overdone. There's a good chance the category has done it recently. And that's what we look at all this stuff when we develop it. So we get down to what's a problem you have at your barbecue that we can solve, right?
Yeah.
So we've always taken that approach. Now everyone's going there. And a really great example is Pizzaville. We're talking about Canadian brand. Pizzaville has never partnered with anyone other than themselves for promotions. So they do a pizza night and it'd be pizza and you get free wings or you get your free breadsticks or whatever the add-on is. This year, for the first time ever, they teamed up, I believe it was with Spin Master. And so now they included a game as a promotion to create a family pizza night to elevate it because they've recognized that their occasion they created with their marketing with this pizza night isn't special anymore. We're all doing it way too often because we're all stuck at home. So they recognized they had to shift and add more value to their occasion, hence this partnership. You see it happening with brands everywhere. Look at Halloween, all the brands doing all sorts of really interesting ways to engage with Halloween, whether it was an online Halloween village you could go through, or it was the red pumpkin campaign, I believe it was, from Nestle. We get red pumpkins and safety, going back to COVID specifically, safety messaging around how do you give out candy if you're allowing Halloween and trick-or-treaters, and how do you make this at home, and how do you do all these things. And so I think that's probably, for me, it's one of the most exciting things about marketing is it's going back to what I think marketing was always trying to do, which is show you how the product or service improves your life. And it should be part of your lifestyle, not just buy this because we're new or because we align to your dietary concerns or whatever it is. We're really trying to realign. We're able to make your life better. We're able to make society better. We're able to make the environment better. And these are the messages that are really having the best impact now, not the, hey, 2 for 1 this week only.
Yeah.
Still works for certain things, but as a whole, there's a big shift going that way, and not just within consumer packaged goods, but across lots of brands. And we're starting to field some calls more recently from different industries that wouldn't normally be taking a shopper marketing approach and calling us in. Think things like automotive, real estate, law, because they're starting to realize that their black and white marketing that's always worked for them historically isn't enough. You need to have that differentiator. And for a lot of these ones, the differentiator is we're here to not get you out of that traffic accident. We're here to give you peace of mind behind the wheel. Totally different message. We're here to make this whole experience a good one for you. So how do you say that without saying we're going to do this for you? Well, you got to build a story around that. I mean, that fits into storytelling, which has been the main trending way of marketing for the last couple of years, several years really. But it's really pushed to the forefront now. You have to be telling stories. You have to be connecting with your consumer. The emotional triggers are more important now than ever before. The giving a solution to a problem, the value add, all these things have always been in the marketers' skill set, and we've always had them niggling in the back of our heads. Now it's the first thing we think about.
I see. So put a little bit more scrutiny on what people are working on, during the COVID. So that's the one thing, connecting with the people and telling story, all these important stuff. But how about user experience? Before COVID, everybody wanted to, drive to the store, that was user experience. You got a great experience there. There's a coupons there. There's a promotions there. But with the COVID, now a lot of stuff is, you pick up only, or you order from Amazon, people just get a shipping at home. So user experience changed a little bit. Talk about, does that change anything in the marketing? And do you see that user experience being important after the COVID, passed, or is people stay in the same user experience mindset because they've been using this for almost a year now during the COVID?
The user experience is certainly important. So we look at the entire customer journey when we're developing our campaign. So you might want to lift sales at Sobeys, but we're also thinking about the 3 ads you're going to see on Facebook, Insta, and Twitter, plus the 2 digital ads you're going to get hit up on when you got, Good Housekeeping and the Weather Network, right? Yeah. So we're thinking about that entire journey. So the journey's changed a little bit with the pandemic because you don't have as many in-person interactions. You have a little bit fewer printed options as well because everyone's gone more digital. Yeah. So some of those things were already happening, right? The paper to digital, that was happening before. E-commerce was already picking up some steam. It's jumped now to a little over 30% of purchases that are being made on e-com. But when you talk to the retail experts, and those really focused on that, they're expecting it to drop back down to somewhere in the low 20% following the ease of restrictions, because, and that's across North America, those numbers are Canadian, but the sentiment's North American. North America really likes to go grocery shopping. Not so much retail shopping, but grocery shopping. We really like that. So we're going to get back to that. As the vaccine rolls out, as things open up, retail will come back. For us, we've seen a shift in some of the communication required as people need to push more to the e-commerce options versus retail. It's been a major ongoing discussion for us this past year with brands about what we want to do in store, what they want to plan in store, what they want to commit to in store, because of the uncertainty about when things will open back up. But the big theme that's kicked off for me, starting really just this month, is there's no more hedging bets when we're talking about like back to school 2021, holiday 2021, Thanksgiving 2021. All these trying to talk Valentine's 2022 because the big brands plan a year in advance. There's very little contingency being talked about in terms of will we still be under a lockdown, right? That's been the ongoing thing this entire year, past year. Looking forward, though, we know vaccines are coming. Everyone's getting a lot more hopeful that this will be a ability to stop it. So the communication has swung to support what's going on. So a little bit more e-com. You see less stuff happening in store. But as things open back up, we're going to swing back over. It's going to become a more cohesive blend again. The thing I think is going to change, kind of what I was saying before, is that your in-store communication needs to be better than just a 2-for-1 buy me now. And it's already happening. You see a lot more communication depending on the aisle, but lots of them are talking about, better taste, healthier for you, Canadian made. We're shifting it to be more of a story around this promotion or this campaign than just we need to move more products. Let's drop the price or throw up a coupon with a catchy tagline on it. It's getting deeper. And as a result, I think because we're having to get smarter about what we build out and the strategies are getting better, I think we're getting better results out of it as well. And the consumer has a way better experience as well, because you're just getting things you actually want, right? I still see Connor say once in the blue moon. I'm like, I know exactly why you picked that prize. I guarantee you it's not going to have the same results that any one of these other prizes would have had, but that was the easy option, right? It's going to move. Yeah, you'll get some sales, but I could have gotten you an extra 23% lift if you'd gone with this prize instead. And so and more shifting that way, right? It's just becoming more of a discussion around what's the ROI going to be, what can you predict, and how you're going to measure it. A big one too. So
one of the segment impacted with this COVID is a small businesses. The storytelling and a user journey, and connecting with the clients is, big stores, they have a budget. They get many different options. They can create those that the story, and they can deliver that message. How about smaller stores? Do they, because they have a very unique stories compared to Walmart or Home Depot or Costco. They have a different story. How can they, is that an opportunity, or are they going to be up against some challenges, post COVID to tell that story? Can they provide that experience that people can get in bigger stores? How do they capitalize on that? From your thoughts?
I mean, so on the retail side, they've really been hammered hard. I really feel for everyone who's in running their own retail business, whether you're grocery or retail in general. Retail has already, so like everything, pandemic just accelerated what was already happening. So retailers were already starting to have to shift away from we're here to sell your product to we're here to create the experience around the product for you. If you look at someone like Dyson or Apple, all these ones, right? So the smaller ones now are going to have to also start to shift to that way, not to the same degree, because the advantage they have being the smaller ones, that they're also community oriented, all of them. Whether they aren't, they are 100% a fixture of the community. And as a result, the community will come by because they're community. So the top, one of my favorite independent retailers here are Summerhill Markets, right? They're very small, 2 locations. But you go in there and it's such a community, right? You can see everything on shelf is only there because people are buying it. Everyone seems to know each other. The cashiers know their regulars. You don't get that as much at the big stores, So for the smaller ones, it's about taking that feeling you get in their stores, and they've spent so much time and money into making them look just the way they think they should look.
Mhm.
So how do you expand that? How do you communicate that in everything you do?
Mhm.
So social and digital, for sure, create that community, build it out. As you start to be able to host events again, start to become that hub. And even if you can't do it in person, take it virtual. The number of whiskey companies, like some of the local distilleries, are starting to do tastings. You sign up online, they send you your kit. You log in at 7 p.m. on a private Zoom, and you get led through a tasting of 4 or 5 different whiskeys, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I've loved the innovation I'm seeing come out of these small businesses. Small brands, it's the same deal. Just going to be a matter of build your community and spend your money wisely in communicating with that community. I think a really good example of this, there's a couple I really love in the Canadian market right now. A really local one here in Ontario is Yellow Fruits, the banana-based ice cream.
Sure.
So not really ice cream, they're banana, I guess banana ice cream. What else are you going to call it? Banana ice cream. They're delicious. I love them. I actually grew up eating a very similar product that we made at home. So these guys have just taken it out. Our founder is Andrew. They are brilliant about building the community around their product. So and shouting from the rooftops what makes them so unique. So Yellow Fruit, their banana is what holds everything they do together. Bananas and kids. Real family orientation. But that drove everything in their marketing. So their first summer in market, not this past summer, but the one before, they found a giant banana car owned by some guy in Florida. They paid him to come up and drive around Ontario for the entire summer to go to every single retail location that they were sold at to hand out samples and coupons. And the experience was bring your kids to see the giant banana car. And it was crazy how successful that was. So that's a great way of doing it, about tying your brand identity, telling a story around it, building it out, bringing it to the people. The other way of doing it is from Midday Squares out of Montreal. Brilliant trio leading that one. Husband, wife, and brother team doing that. Just brilliant. So they're out of Montreal. They started by really focusing on just Montreal, going to all the coffee shops, talking to the community. You can order a free sample from them. When you, I think they're still doing this. When you put in your first order, you get a Polaroid of them with signs saying, "Thank you so much for the order." It's all about building that community. And now they're expanding into the US. They're hitting 3 major cities. They've spent the last couple months traveling in the middle of all this chaos into those communities, and of course doing it safely if there are restrictions and all that. They're doing it intentionally because they know how important it is to build your local community. So they're expanding across Canada that way. They've just had teams in Vancouver. They launched in Toronto and Ontario last year. So they had teams at all the Sobeys and the Metros. They were everywhere doing sampling, running events. Their head hype guy, Jake, if you don't follow him on LinkedIn, you should. The guy's a beacon of positivity and energy. But he literally does pump-up sessions for corporate companies where he'll just jump on a video call with them. I think he did with Deloitte, among others. They're like, "All right, guys, we're going to do our 5-minute power-up. Let's go." And he dances like a maniac. I mean, he's a very fast dancer, but he does stuff I could just never do. I don't have that type of chutzpah. But this guy is just a ball of energy, and it's all about that story. And that's the whole story, is being bold, being unforgivable about being who you are, and shouting it loudly and building it into the community and championing your community. That's the direction all marketing is really headed in. So if you're a small company and you're a small brand, retail or product, think about your community and think about how you're going to engage with them. Because I hear way too often, we want to target everyone. No, you don't. Your product's not going to appeal to everyone. You want to target this massive audience. Well, maybe you might get all those people, but if you try to talk to all those people, you're not going to talk to any of those people. So how narrow can you get? And you can get too narrow. For sure, you can get too narrow. But I'd rather see a brand get too narrow and come to me and say, "Hey, we want to target this hyper niche." And you'd be like, "Oh, hold on. That's really interesting, but can we talk about that?" And then as an extension, we'll focus on that, but what are the ripple effects we can build in so you can get that larger audience as well without having to spend more money? So we'll target your niche, but we'll have overflow into everyone else. And that's the sign of a great campaign. When you can have a message that hits your target audience bang on, but it's powerful enough and resonates enough with a slightly larger audience that you get the ripples. So you get your keto loyalist, you have a few people who are playing around with keto, and you have some people who want that high fat, high protein, low carb. So if you can have a message that hammers on the keto, but that person, that third tier out, is also still interested and will still buy, you won't get that entire market, but you'll get a bite of it. That's king. Like, you're managing to hit everybody in a way that's true to your message, on brand, sticking to your core community, but hits everyone else at the same time.
Yeah. So you can focus on one target audience, and then you can spread it, or people can get influence other around it, but you target on one. But that's a great point you mentioned, that small businesses, even though they don't have a big marketing budget, or they don't have a lot of resources, but they can get creative on the guy who's dancing you talking about. You can be creative and just use your time and energy and get a lot of attention, instead of just trying to spend a lot of resources and a budget on trying to create something.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the newest platforms like TikTok is a prime example. I've hesitated to really do a deep dive into it personally. I'm about to, because of necessity. But one of the coolest things about TikTok is that it's a raw platform, right? You're not looking for polish. You don't want it to look like it was all set up in a studio to be filmed just so. You kind of want that raw. You want the bouncing camera. And it makes it, I think it's a lot easier now for startup brands who don't necessarily have marketing experience or media experience or photography experience. If you're going on, you can get away with so much now, especially on TikTok, but on all the platforms. I mean, do a quick scroll through your Instagram on your product, like in your category, see how everyone else is framing it. It's not that hard to get something pretty darn close. I mean, I know lots of brands who are sold nationally where I know it's still the founders doing the shots, because you look at them, I've been to their houses, so I know it's a shot done in their front window. I know they're shooting it on their iPhone, because like these devices are better than my Nikon, like my DSLR in some ways. Which is nuts. But yeah, it's really about maximizing what you can do. More and more. I mean, we're both pretty active on LinkedIn. It's a platform where we want honesty. We want to see your fails as much as your successes, and we're going to celebrate both, because we learn from failing. So let's celebrate what we learned, and if we won, awesome, let's celebrate the win. But social's become really forgiving about that. So get out there, go do it, create, get your name out there. Whether it's your brand or your personal name, do both. I mean, I think there's room for both. Just pick your platforms and go create.
Yeah. So that's a great point you mentioned, Jared. There, showing your failures and your success. That's a hesitation. I've been victim of that as well. Don't want to put too much out of it. Because you don't want to show a lot of your failures. How important that is that for people to connect with you, to seeing your failures as well, not only your successes. If you can just talk about that, is that important for people to connect with you, to get the whole story from you? This is where you've been, that's been your journey, to see the both sides, or just showing one side? Because your perspective on a social could be sometimes narrow, that they only see a one side of the story.
Yeah, I think you have to share both. I don't think you need to be shouting every failure and like highlighting every failure. And the reality is, I mean, I'm kind of an example of this. People ask me all the time for like my big wins or big losses. Honestly, I don't have any massive wins or massive losses, because I kind of ride the middle. So my losses, I'll win, a couple $100,000 contract, and I'll lose one, right? They're the same for me. So I just kind of ride that middle ground. But in general, I fail, and I'll share a failure. And there is a limit, I think, to how much I know people disagree with me on this one, Midday in particular, because they share everything very loudly. I do think there's some risk to share absolutely every failure, especially if it's live, right? No, not necessarily like live, but in recent history, if you're trying to get investors and you're talking about how you can barely keep things open right now because your sales aren't where they need to be, maybe you don't want to share quite that way, right? There's other ways you can frame that makes it a much more positive spin. And so I think you should always, I don't think you should always share failures, but I think you should show some failures and put them in perspective, because nothing is all, green grass and roses all the time. We all go through struggles. So I think sharing those struggles is important, whether you do it massively publicly, like a social media post, or you do it semi-privately in a group chat with a bunch of people. But I think it's really important we discuss them. And then what you share publicly, the only filter I put on, someone just asked me recently if any of my posts have ever been sponsored. The quick answer is no. I support brands that I'm a fanboy of, and I say it very loudly and proudly. And same thing with failures, the only filter I'll put on that is if there's anything directly damaging. Right. So I'm not going to share, where to decent. This doesn't actually hold true. But if my agency was on the verge of shutting down tomorrow, I'm not going to say, hey, my agency's on the verge of shutting down tomorrow. Right. That's not the type of thing you're going to share. which is not the case. We're doing quite well. But, if I was in that situation, I might say something more along the lines of, my sales process hasn't been clicking the way it should be recently. I've been trying these things. What I've learned from this is I need to go back to my roots, shake myself up, hit the pavement more. And now that's my message. So it has a positive spin, motivational, hints at what my failure was, but it's not going to damage any of my image or reputation. I don't think, and I know I called it midday, and I don't think they shoot themselves in the foot. But they live very loudly and proudly. And there's once or twice I've seen a post go, "Oh, wow, I'm happy you posted this now and not when that happened a few months ago." Oh boy, again, they really know what they're doing. They're a brilliant, brilliant team there. But I think it's important to share. I mean, you look at, I apologize for this language that's coming out, but there's an organization called Fuck Up Nights. A lot of pieces. The Toronto chapter is run by, I think it's still run by Marsha Drucker. I haven't talked to her in a bit. But that organization, it's global. Their monthly events, mostly monthly events, are just focused around failure, hence the name, Fuck Up Night. You have 3 founders or senior leaders come in to share a major screw up. They got 10 minutes, 10 slides. You just have to manage to screw up everything, and here's what I learned from it, and here's what I want you to take away. And it's awesome, because I think we can learn way more from people's failures than we can from their successes, mostly because a lot of success isn't replicable. Right? Look at my career. I get asked all the time, how do I do what you did? Well, in a nutshell, build a great network, keep your friends and colleagues close, keep conversations going, and be open to opportunity when it comes. I think I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate that things have landed and worked out the way they have. But it was somewhat created because of my actions, right? Nobody's lucky just because they're lucky. There's always a lot of work that goes in behind it. And so, you want to copy my path? Okay, good luck. You'll never be able to copy it, right? I've made jumps in my career that most people would never be able to do. So I'd rather hear from someone who tried to pivot and failed miserably at it. Okay, you're trying to get from management consulting into marketing and it hasn't worked for you. What did you do? What did you try? Because I don't want to repeat what you've tried. Right? Learn way more from that than talking to Joe Schmo over here who got lucky because he had met the right people at the right time and built the network. It's like, you're not going to be the next Steve Jobs, right? Or the next. It doesn't really matter. Pick your massive innovator. You're probably not that person. So how much can you learn from the Apple story? You can learn lots from the Apple story. But as a founder, from a startup, what can you take away from that? I think you probably learn more from talking to 3 founders, 2 of whom have failed at what they were doing, or they're on their 3rd or 4th startup. Than hearing, I can't hear from Jobs anymore, but Cook, right? And learn way more from that founder than you will from Cook.
Your goal's going to be different. Your journey is different. So there's no point going on the same path. But when you're looking, Jared, from your expert in the marketing, you've been doing it for a long time. When you're looking at the product, what do you see? Do you see the story behind it, or do you see the product itself? What do you always trying to look for every time you see a brand or product?
It's a great question. It's changed. It constantly changes depending on what happens to be at top of my mind at that exact time. So, since I got involved in agency, I spend a lot more time looking at marketing and packaging and branding. My wife does now as well. So we're in a competition. It's a very friendly competition where she tries to find marketing things before I do. Very rare that happens. Or she tries to find about startups before I find out about them. Again, doesn't happen often. So now when I'm out shopping and I'm looking at the shelf of products, I'm looking for things that catch my eye. So if I'm looking at a wall of Campbell's, it's all red, I'm going to walk right by it unless they have an in-store communication going on. So it's when something catches my eye, I'm like, oh, why'd that catch my eye? What made me pause? Was it the logo? Was it the packaging? Was it that I'm not gluten-free, but maybe they have a big claim that's really shouted out on it. There might be a sign saying new product. So I'll look for all those things. When I'm personally shopping, I work off of a very regimented list of what I need to get. So I don't explore a ton. So when I do explore, I'm really taking a blended interest from a marketing standpoint. What are you doing with your marketing? What are you doing on social? What are you doing in store? And I follow all those things. But I'm also looking at the category. Oh, you're a new product. You're the 3rd new brand I've seen enter the space in the last year. What's going on? Why is this picking up speed? What's your claim versus that product's claim? So I kind of look at it across the board, kind of depending on what I'm doing at that exact moment. Normally my process is when I see a product that catches my eye, I try and market it. I literally go like, okay, if this was mine, what would I do? Where do I think they're at? And more often than not, if it's a new product, that founder ends up getting an email from me, be like, hey, just saw your product. Love to chat about where you're at. And usually there's a response back, oh, we can't afford you, we don't need marketing. I'm like, yeah, no, that's fine. I know you can't. I'm aware of who you are. Say that a lot of calls, funnily enough. Yeah, I know you don't have budget. You think I didn't do my research? I know how big you are. Yeah, you can afford me. I want to hear about what you're doing and where your challenges are, so I can help you get to the stage where we can be having a conversation about how I can help you. But until that point, let me spend the next 3 years helping, hand-holding you, introducing you to people, get you there. So yeah, I kind of look at both. I look at the products, look at the marketing around it, and then I just tie it all back into the trends. If you follow me on LinkedIn, when I do posts around product, which I do a lot, it's never, very rare is it, hey, this company's launching this product. Okay, great. Everyone posts about that. I'll say, hey, this company's launching this product. They're the 4th company in this category to launch something into that niche in the last year, which speaks to this consumer trend, which is why you should be paying attention to this thing. So you can only really make those types of posts and make those types of conclusions and draw those insights when you're paying attention to the big world of that, the big spider web that's all part of. Again, which is where brands don't always have the time to do that, and that's where, as a marketer and a foodie and someone who kind of grew up in retail as well, I just naturally see all these things, and I spend a huge amount of my time following all this stuff. So when we get a pitch, we get all this information from the brand more often than not, because we do work with typically larger brands. But then I get to dump all the info in my head onto my team, and then I'll do additional research into what's going on in the category. So, I said before, we're going to make sure you don't use the same prize that your competitor did last year. I want to make sure that not only is your product not using it, I'm going to make sure that any affiliate category, so if you're selling a hot dog bun, if there's a hot dog company, a burger company, a condiment company who is using that same prize in the last 2 years, we're probably not going to pick it unless we have a really good reason for doing so, because that consumer has already gotten that product. So if you're doing a barbecue, right? So one of my go-tos right now for summer, because I see it way too often, there was a bun company last year who did a barbecue. The year before that, there was a meat company who did it. And actually, there's a condiment company who did it at the same time as well. 2 different barbecue companies sponsoring 2 different campaigns. But there's a lot of barbecues given out last year. So if you were to come to me right now and you were a bread company or a condiment company or like a hot dog hamburger company and said, hey, I want a summer contest with a big prize, I'd say, that's awesome. We're not going to do a barbecue. Because it's been done for the last several years, unless we have time and I can go test the pricing, which we love to do for that reason. Maybe it is because for your target audience, barbecues, people burn through their barbecue somehow. I don't know. It should last for many, many years, but maybe there is a huge demand for it. And so we would say, you know what, even though everyone's doing it, we want to do it again, but we're going to come and tell you, we know this prize has been used a ton, but we tested your target audience and they actually still pick it as their top prize option. So we're going to keep going with it. But our default is, if everyone's been using it for multiple years and it's something like a barbecue that has a long lifetime value, odds are your target audience has already gotten one last year.
I see.
But we'll dig into that and really measure that all out to guess. There's only been 1,000 barbecues given out in the campaign, right? Then there's a good chance your target audience hasn't gotten one yet. So maybe that is like, this is the complexity of these campaigns that the smaller emerging brands are starting to appreciate, because they've tried to run their own now and go, oh crap, I didn't realize that, what I chose for a prize isn't just what I think is going to work. There's a lot of research and that goes into what's picked. There's lots of costs. Like, have you even thought about the cost of your insurance for running a contest? Because if it's big enough, I mean, you should always have insurance for your contests. But like, I have a separate insurance policy just for that reason. Because if contests go sideways, you get sued. And it sucks. And so if you're a small brand and you do a massive prize and you don't have insurance set up and you haven't put your mechanics in properly and someone calls you out on it and sues you, that can sue your company.
So there's so much thought process that goes behind that every campaign you guys run.
Tons. And this is why when I can have the conversation about this point, and then Brad's like, okay, this sounds amazing. I got 20 grand. What do we do? And I go, that's a great question. Let me bring in Cherry Ann, because she's going to make this down nickel and dime for you. Let me pass you to this is my expertise. Let me pass you to my next expert, right? We're a team of experts.
So you need a lot of skill set to go around it.
That's it.
So if I'm a brand, and let's leave the budget issues on the side. On the time of COVID, do I contract, or do I expand? What thought process goes behind it? Do I hold down the budget until the COVID passed, and now there's more room available for get the messages out, or do I go more harder during this COVID and get the brand out? At least people know because nobody else is marketing, and I can get the word out, and then I can capitalize later on. So which one did you guys recommend out of those?
That is a big question, and I'm going to caveat it with a massive "it depends." My default answer, my general answer is, if you've got funds to market, market. Because without marketing, it's one of those fun things. You want more sales? Amazing. How are people going to know who you are without marketing? Because I'm not going to come and buy your product if I don't know who you are. I'm just not going to look. I don't even know to look for you, right? So I think you always need to be spending at least something on marketing. How much you spend on marketing, there's a ton of factors involved. What are your current sales velocities? How much are you able to risk in terms of allocating budget, knowing that your ROI might not be as high as it was traditionally, although realistically it should be a little bit higher. Depends. Last summer, if you were doing anything in social, expect your ROI to be way higher. All the big brands pulled their budgets, right, during BLM. So that was a great time to be spending money if you had it available. Unfortunately, that was also when most snack brands, or a lot of the emerging brands, were really hurting because they'd lost their food service contracts, or very minimal food service contracts were still kind of slowly edging through. So, there's a ton of factors. My general thought is, if you've got the funds available, market. If they're limited funds, try and do as much as you can independently, or rely on one trusted agency partner, whomever it is, to build out your strategy. Spend a little bit more there, so then you can execute it effectively. Because marketing today, it's all about being consistent in everything you do. Consistent message, consistent frequency, consistent voice. It all has to be that way. And if you're scrambling to make sales and talk to your retailers and your distributors, and you have to make your product, you're going to slip up somewhere. So it's worth having a calendar built for you, so you can just sit down and be like, what do I have to do? Oh, yes, here's my checklist. But yeah, in general, I think you should be marketing with a few caveats, but usually, if you've got money to market, you have to market, right? You have to if no one knows who you are, how are you going to sell?
So it doesn't matter. It's a COVID time or it's a pandemic. If you get a market, you get a budget, just push the message out there and just keep at it.
You need to market. You don't necessarily need to have budgets, right? You can do lots of free marketing, or not direct out of pocket money. So you can engage in a influencer campaign, but if you have really no budget to spend on that, go into your social media and go through your last 50 posts and see who's been really engaging. And I guarantee, if you've been building it out properly and building a community, you'll have a few champions who are the first to respond to someone else's comment. Send them a message. Hey, I've been loving what you've been doing to support us. Thank you so much. We're sending you some free product. Would love to see you do a post about it too. Let us know. Set it up. Your champions will always champion you. So leverage that. So there's ways to organically do it. So you don't want to have to spend a lot of money on your marketing, but you do need to be doing marketing in some way.
Right. So how much time of your Jared goes into business leaders? I talked to a lot of business leaders. Some of them preparing, as the COVID passed, what they have to do in order to get back to the revenue level before COVID, or they're trying to build their strategies right now. What they need to go to market. Is a coaching is a big part of the business leaders. Like, how do how much time that your time that goes into working with the business leaders and trying to help them. People like me, don't have a marketing background, but we need to market, right? So education and coaching and this business leadership. Do you spend time in that area as well, or do you expect them to know what they're trying to do before they come to you?
No, we do both. Both. So within the agency, I head up our business development. It's arguably the biggest job I have within the agency. I mean, I do some copy, I do editing, all this other stuff, research, but ultimately the real day-to-day stuff's handled by my team. So I do a lot of the biz dev. So I spend a lot of time fielding calls from everyone and reaching out to everybody, because I want to talk to everyone. It's a legitimate interest. I mean, of course I'm reaching out for business, but read between the lines. Of course, we're all talking to each other for business. So I spend quite a bit of time doing the education piece. Whether it's with business leaders saying, hey, what am I doing right now? What do you see going on in the sector? Or, graduating students saying, hey, I'm trying to get a job. What's going on in the job market? Which I'm not as hands-on as I used to be, but I know what's going on in the trends from the branding, right? Marketing and hiring kind of go hand in hand too. So I do a lot of education piece. The brands who come in knowing the stuff I normally talk about. So, the ones who know 20 grand is not enough to do something in store, the ones who have an idea of what they want to accomplish, the ones who come in with an objective of, I've been tasked by my buyer to help drive traffic to this store or to these stores or to this region of the grocery store. Those conversations I have a lot faster because I just need to understand the scope. Once I know scope, you don't need to talk to me anymore. I'm either going to vet you and say, yeah, we're awesome. Let me get in touch with Sherry Ann. Or, you know what? We're actually not the best agency for you. So we can talk about this. I'm happy to chat with you more. But let me introduce you to, 2-3 other agencies. Let me give you a few names. I'm not going to tell you which one to go with because I've built too many connections and I don't want to be the final deciding factor for you. It's your decision. I'm just a person. But let me recommend 2 or 3 that I would say call them. I'd say these 3 are great. Any one of them will do what you need, but you go pick out which one you like most. Usually it comes down to creative. So you like that person's creative or this person's creative. That's eye of the beholder. I mean, we've lost contract or pitches on creative. You just didn't like the creative. I thought it was brilliant and you hated it. Cool. I can't argue. So I spend a ton of time though. And it also comes from my background, right? I come from management consulting. That's practitioner, coach. I've been a teacher, assistant teacher with the Peel Board, Peel District School Board back in the day. So I kind of come from that educational space. So I spend probably more time than I should truthfully talking to people who don't really know what's going on or ran through a way too small or are trying to figure out how do you go from selling out of your kitchen to now trying to get into all the independents in Toronto. Some of these things I have answers for, and others I don't. I just know people who they should talk to. But that's what makes me happy. That's what makes me positive. What motivates me. What keeps me going is hearing about everyone else's successes, failures, and being able to help them out to that next stage. Things have certainly not been easy for us at the agency, but hearing about everything else that's going on puts what we're going through in perspective, but also gives me an idea of where everything else is going. And when I'm having a crappy day, which does happen, talk to 2 of these founders. Nothing can get you more pumped up than talking to a founder who's passionate about what they do. I challenge you to find me someone who's more energized, more motivated, more excited about it than a founder about their project. The product, right?
And from our business leadership, we all do that, either you run a marketing company or any business leadership, we all have to maintain. So how do you maintain that for yourself, and for your team, Jared, going forward, one of the challenge I was talking to business a leader a couple of days ago, and one of the challenge that she mentioned that, the business leaders have to build a new skills, not only you have to stay informed, but you have to also manage your teams a little bit different. There's a COVID going on, people are a little bit more emotional. You have to manage your teams. You have to make sure that everybody stays on the same page. So how do you manage that in your organization, Jared?
Sure. So I'm really fortunate that the agency had an amazing culture and structure before I took it over, or before I got involved. Since I took it over, got involved. And since I got involved, I just took the elements that I loved and the team loved and just cranked them up. So prime example, things like telework. When I got in, the policy was, you can work from home, but we need a couple weeks notice and all these things, which is silly. I don't give a crap where you work. I'm a true, Gen Y millennial leader. I honestly don't care where you work. As long as your work is done at the highest quality and it's delivered on time and our clients are blown away, do not care. So that's my personal opinion, right? So I took that and I went to my VPs and said, hey guys, here's my policy. Now I understand that our operations might not allow for that. So you tweak it and come back to me with a tweaked version. So our tweaked version is our old version, because it's now changed. Our old version was our preference is you're in the office, but of course understand if you aren't able to do so. If possible, we'd like 48 hours notice just so we can prepare. If not, of course, we understand. We're very flexible. So that's how it started. And then over the years, which slowly became, my VP creative director lives a 2-hour drive out from the office each way. So it's 4 hours of driving. So he ended up saying, hey, can I work remotely multiple days a week and just come in a couple of days? My answer was, personally, I don't care. But you do need to go and get sign off from every single team member and come back to me with everyone saying it's fine. That's my only request, because ultimately you work with all them very closely all day, all night. So that has to be okay. And they said, it's fine, not a problem. So when pandemic hit, we had already had some times where there's only one person in the office because the rest of us are remote, especially over the summer. Cottages, beautiful weather, kids at home. So we had talked about getting rid of the office and going fully virtual pre-pandemic. So when the pandemic hit, it was a much easier answer. So we ran it for a few months. And I, again, took a vote of the team. Say, hey, send me an anonymous email. Or not anonymous, send it just to me. So it's anonymous for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Yes, no, concerns, comments, hit me up, because I'm not going to pull the office out from under us if anybody says they want it. Nobody wanted the office. Literally nobody wanted the office.
Yeah.
So we split it out. So one of the things I'll say about our culture as well, we're an office of professionals, right? So I had a younger team member who was with us for a little over a year before she went back home to Australia. And when she exited, she said she loved working with us. The only thing she said she wanted to change was that we didn't have a particularly strong after-work culture, which of course makes sense when all of us are in our early 30s at the youngest, and all of us have kids. Most of us have kids at home. Of the 7 of us, only two don't have kids, and the rest of us, for the most part, have kids under the age of 10. So yeah, we don't want to hang around after work. We want to go home. We want to go see our kids, right? So as much as I'd love to say we have this culture that's hyper warm and cozy and all that, we aren't that type of culture. We all get along. We all really like each other, but we're here to do a job. And when the job is done, we want to go home and be with our family. So a lot of what was already built in was a lot of accountability, a lot of independence, but also a lot of accountability. And so it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where all of the 3 of us VP, like the 2 VPs and myself, we all understand each other's skill sets. We all run our own teams, more or less, right? And so each one holds their teams accountable. The entire agency, because we all interact, I've got a studio and account team. They talk every morning to review what needs to be done for the day. I'll sometimes join, but often not, because I get updates from them all anyways, and I talk to them all intermittently. And I think that's also part of it too. For us, due to the nature of what we do, we have a daily meeting every morning. So the team is all connected. They know exactly what's going on with each other. They know what's coming up. I get updates from my VPs. I talk to my one VP, Sherry. I talk to her daily. Justin a couple times a week because he's on the creative side. So as the biz dev strategy trend guy, I don't talk to him as much, only because I'm not directly, what I can provide isn't going to impact what he does so much. I get pulled in and I talk to him more when we're doing a pitch. So I'll be like, hey, we need to talk about all these strategies, and here's a bunch of pictures I've seen from other things. So when you build out your creative, don't do these. Or really like the way this looked. Can we recreate that? Does that make sense? So we'll work that way. And so for us, we haven't changed too much. What we'll be swinging back to, once we're able to, we'll be meeting once a month to get the whole team together, whether it's a lunch or we go and do a team build thing or whatever it's going to be. We've held off to this till now, mostly not because we don't want to, but because health safety is always paramount. Lots of us have, older grandparents or parents. And so for us, it was just not worth the risk. And again, going back to our culture, we talk every quarter as a team, and it's a big hey, catch up, here's what's going on, because I also run a transparent office and company, so everyone kind of has a pretty decent idea of where we're at financially, how the year's going, what's happening with accounts. And of course, it makes sense. We're a small team, right? Each one of my account managers handles a substantial percentage of the business. So they know what's going on. So why would I not be transparent, right? It's not hard to extrapolate. So what changed for us is a lot more minor than what a lot of other companies would go through, because we had already been working somewhat remotely pre-pandemic, because we had a culture that allowed for us to work remotely very comfortably. It just kind of fell in for us. So we've been pretty smooth on that transition. We've had to slow down. We were running an internal program. We called them think tank taste tests. So we did a bunch of those. We had to stop them last year during the pandemic because I didn't want to, especially during the lockdown, because I didn't want to go and buy product that people needed. And then we've stopped for the last couple of months for the same reason, and because I would normally go around and drop stuff off at people's houses. I don't want to do that with the higher risk right now. So we'll get back to it. Shipping stuff's expensive, really expensive in Canada. And so, as much as I'd love to be able to ship everyone samples of tomato sauce, that adds up really quickly. So we'll get back to those two. So yeah, for us, it's been pretty smooth. It's been pretty smooth.
Interesting. So how does Jared keep up to date with all this stuff, Jared? You read a lot of books, what you do, looks like you go through a lot of information. Tell us if you have a favorite book or what book you're reading right now. How do you get all your information?
Books right now, no books on my list.
Any favorite book in the past?
Last really good book I read, Sapiens, probably one of the best ones I've read recently. The other books I've been reading have been more textbook oriented. Just I'm trying to learn certain skill sets. Most of my research comes from newsletters. So I have a few sources. So I've got a bunch of newsletters that are industry focused, a bunch around marketing, some retail. I've got some really niche ones. I've got newsletters coming in about ingredients. So all I hear about is ingredient development.
Nice.
It's stuff that you'll never see on my LinkedIn because it is so niched out. There's some things. I've got alerts on Google Scholar for the latest research around coupon buying. So I'll hear about how coupons influence purchases in Japan. Relevant for North America? Not at all. Totally different, but interesting. So it's a lot of newsletters, Google alerts for sure. I'm probably getting between 30 and 60 emails daily. Wow. That are info sourced. Some are more generic, like CNN 5 Things or Morning Brew is one of my go-to morning newsletters. David Polera has an amazing newsletter for marketing. And for all of these, I don't always read them. Or I don't necessarily read everything in there. Like on the Google alerts, there might be 50 articles in there. I'm not going to read all 50, so I'll scroll through it very, very quickly, kind of pick and choose. But yeah, I'd say I probably start my day. I always start my day with kind of catching up on things, and by things I mean news or breaking releases, whatever's going on. So I probably spend about an hour to start the day, even before work starts, kind of catching up, seeing what's happening, what's trending. I'm an very active LinkedIn user. I do a lot of almost all my communications done through LinkedIn, and then my feed is highly curated to those who are sharing content around what I'm interested in. So leadership culture is still a big part of what I do. Everything around CPG and sales and marketing and retail and grocery. So just from constantly reading what I'm reading and seeing what everyone else is talking about kind of keeps me up to date on everything, because my reach out, when I start to talk to brands, when I reach out to them first, I have a generic like, hey, I want to connect with you. Never goes anywhere. My next message is always hyper value added. So, hey, competitor X just relaunched this, aligning with these 3 trends. Saw you're doing Y. Are you planning on going down this path further? Have you thought about how you're going to market that? Is this going across all retailers? Like, I'll start putting in specific questions around what's going on, for the sole purpose of getting that person's attention, because we all get hammered with these sales messages, and I get them all the time. I hear you're the person to talk to about why. No, I'm not. Let me assure you, I'm not that person. So I wanted to show people right out the gate that I'm not just cold calling you. I am, of course, I'm cold calling you, but I actually know what your brand is doing, what's happening in your category, what your competitors are doing. And so my research, what I'm saying on top of, is a vital piece of my business development. I legitimately try and sell it by saying, hey, here's the trend. Here's a great example. We can help you do this, but are you interested in doing that? And if not, cool, let's talk about that. What are you doing instead? How are you doing that? And it's led to amazing conversations and a lot of business for lots of other people. I've passed on millions of dollars of business at this point because I'm really picky about the fit. If I don't think we can generate enough ROI, I will, and my VP gets a little annoyed with me for this, because I've definitely passed on something we probably could have done. But we really need to feel good about what we do, because I'm not in it for a single sale. I want to work with you for the next several years. And even if it's, I have a client who's maybe spending, if they're breaking 40 grand a year, I'd be shocked. I don't even think they're going to break this year, right? So they're a very small client for me overall, but they've been with us for several years because we stretch every dollar we can and we reuse stuff and we just put a fresh look on it, and it gets results. And we're really good at it. But we have that because we turned them down on their first 2 pitches several years ago. Because look, this you can do stuff with this, but don't come to us. We're just too big for what you need. Go to this person. They're going to build your social. They're going to build out your content. And in 2 years' time, actually, it wasn't even 2 years, you'll have things where you need to be, where you can come to us. We can take your limited several thousand a month and actually do something substantial with that, where you're going to see results. Not just we're going to maintain our social media and we're going to get 3 extra likes every month. And I don't give a crap. I want to see sales. If I'm not seeing needle move on your sales, we didn't do our job. And that's a big piece for me. If you just want the engagement, we'll do it. Like we'll do some projects if it's part of a, like my biggest client, we'll do whatever they need us to do. We will now do for them, hands down. Right? Because for them, we can put so much value into their big projects that the small ones that we would normally pass on because they're break even for us or they won't get quite the ROI we would normally gun for. It's okay because it's this piece of that. But if you're only coming to us for this, I want to make sure that we all feel good about the way this goes. And if we can't, I'd rather pass and circle back.
Interesting. Nice. What message, the people who are watching, or the message goes to business leaders, we send this newsletter out to all of them. Any message you want to leave for all the business leaders that connected with us or anything any words you want to leave for them?
Yeah. If you need marketing, call me. But no, in all seriousness, look, it's been a really rough year. The year ahead of us it's going to be a little bit easier, but we're still in for another couple of rough months. I would say for everyone who's kind of struggling through, take a deep breath. You're doing great. You got it. Take a step back. Look at your strategy. Plan it out, right? It's going to change. You got to be flexible. I think a big piece that people, when we get stressed, we start to hold ourselves to certain goals and objectives that often we don't need to. Again, I'll use a personal example. I'm working on a food product. I got really fixated on wanting to do everything from scratch and things had to be done a certain way. Wasn't feasible that way. So I've shifted my process 4 times now. And each time it took someone shaking me and kind of smacking me on the side of the head, be like, why are you so fixated on doing that? There's no need. Well, so why? Why are you making your life more complicated? Right? And I legitimately just had blinders on. I had blinders on. I was emotionally connected and I was really fixated on being a certain thing. So build your plans, build your strategies, but build in some flexibility. Be prepared, have contingencies. Or if you don't have contingencies, just be prepared to be open to the ideas of others for solutions. And then for marketing, be smart about where you spend your dollars. You don't need to spend. The answer isn't always spending more. Sometimes it's just repositioning what you're doing or targeting more effectively. Think about put yourself in the consumer's shoes or your target's shoes if you're not a consumer, right? And then talk to them in the way that you'd want to be talked to. So if you're trying to sell me insurance, don't come and say, hey, is your house insured? Of course my house is insured. I wouldn't have it if I wasn't. So talk to me about what you're going to give me. Is it going to be peace of mind? Are you going to be able to let me save more for my family trip? Are you going to be able to add on, hey, you don't actually have ICE coverage right now. We're adding that in as a free add-on because you've been a loyal client for us for 5 years, but I know your son's about to get his driver's license. Have you talked about his insurance? All those things, it's got to be much more around your client, solution providing, value adding. And if you're not sure you can do it, I would highly recommend engaging an agency. If for nothing more, the strategy, and then if you've got the resource and you don't have the time, let them take it all on. And if you want to chat about some broad ideas, I'm always happy to chat. And if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of where it could fit, let's do it. I'd love to work with, like I mentioned before, we're broadening ourselves out too. So we really focus now on any service or product that's consumer focused.
Gotcha.
Right? If you're trying to get to the consumer, we're there. If you want to connect with another business, we use that too. That's trade marketing or not really trade marketing. We're still consumer focused, but some trade for sure. Some of that B2B we do. But if you're consumer focused and you're trying to get that communication going, we'd love to chat because we're trying to do more with 30 years of experience of helping brands move their products across North America. I'm confident we can help you out too.
I see. Where can people find you, Jared?
You can find me all over the place. Best place is on LinkedIn. I live, die, breathe on there. Jared Kligerman, easy to find. You can also find the think tank on there. There's a lot of think tanks. We're the one with the triple T. I'm on all sorts of other social too, but you'll note on most of them in my profiles, it says, I'm not on here. Find me on LinkedIn. There's a reason for that. That's probably the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out, send me a message, or you can send me an email, jared@tttmrktg.com.
See, we send this in the video in a newsletter as well. So I'll include all your contact information in an email as well. So people can click on our website and they can contact you that way as well.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, Jared. Thank you so much for your time. I was learned so much on the field of marketing from you. Thank you so much.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Cheers. Bye.